Good day, accountants. Welcome back to the discussion of leases or lease accounting. This time, we will move on to the part 2, which tackles the accounting for the part of the lessor. Accounting for leases by the lessor. PFRS 16 provides that the lessor should classify leases as either an operating lease or a finance lease. When we say finance lease, it transfers substantially all the risk and rewards. When we say operating lease, it does not transfer substantially all the risk and rewards. Ano ba yung risk and rewards na sinasabi natin? Yung risk, ito yung chance na malugi. Kapag ka rewards, ito yung chance na kumita ka, mag-gain ka dun sa isang situation. So, nabanggit na natin kanina or dun sa may part 1 na si lease or si lessee, kinaklasify niya yung lease transactions as a finance lease automatically under the standards of PFRS 16. For as long as hindi niya may-meet yung exemptions, which are the short-term lease or low-valued asset, na pwedeng maklasify as a operating lease. Dito naman sa part ni lessor, there are certain indicators na magiging basis on how the lessor should classify a lease transaction as a finance lease or an operating lease. So, let's study those indicators. Finance lease indicators. First indicator is the transfer of ownership. The lease transfers ownership of the underlying asset to the lessee at the end of the lease term. So, kapag yung underlying asset or yung asset na nirerentahan ni lessee is mapapasa kanya na at the end of the lease term, it is an indication of a finance lease. So, second, bargain purchase option. Bargain purchase option is the lessee has an option to purchase the asset at a price which is expected to be sufficiently lower than the fair value at the date the option becomes exercisable. At the inception date, it is reasonably certain that the option will be exercised. If it is reasonably certain that the option will be exercised, yung kapag ka si lessee, i-exercise yung bargain purchase option, it is an indication of a finance lease for as long as yung option price is mas mababa kaysa dun sa may fair value ng asset mo at the exercisable date. So third, lease term is at least 75% of the useful life of the lease asset or majority of life. Kapag ka majority of life ng useful life ng asset mo is under a lease term, it is an indication of a finance lease. Bakit? Kasi kung meron kang asset na 12 years ang useful life, tapos pina-lease mo siya for 10 years, mas matagal pang nakinabang si lessee kaysa sa'yo na lessor or yung may-ari ng asset na yun. Fourth, present value of the lease payments is at least 90% of the fair value of the lease payment of the leased asset at the inception date. The lease term, the present value of the lease payments amounts to the substantially all of the fair value of the underlying asset at the inception date. When we say substantially all, it is defined by the United States GAAP as 90% pataas ng fair value ng leased asset. So sinasabi lang nito na kapag ka yung present value ng lease payments mo is 90% ng fair value ng leased asset nung nirerentahan mong asset, it is an indication of a finance lease. Bakit? Kasi parang pinabili na ni lessor kay lessee yung asset na yon. Kasi halos same lang nung purchase price ni lessor yung present value ng lease payments ni lessee. So, fifth is the lease asset is of specialized nature. Inception and commencement date. Ganito lang yan kasimple. Inception date, kung kailan nagkaroon ng meeting of two minds, kung kailan na-create yung contract, kung kailan nagkasundo yung lessee at yung lessor. when we say commencement date, kung kailan naging available kay lessee or kung kailan ginawang available ni lessor yung underlying asset para kay lessee. If the lessor classify the lease transaction as a finance lease, the initial measurement will be a receivable, which is equal to the net investment in the lease. Ano ba yung net investment in the lease? Net investment in the lease is equals to the present value of the gross investment or present value of lease payments plus present value of unguaranteed receivable value. Finance lease by the lessor subsequently measured at the net lease receivable measured at the similar to the amortized cost financial asset. The finance income is computed using the effective interest method, which is present dun sa may contract, and lease payments are applied against the gross investment in the lease. Initial direct costs include in the initial measurement of the net investment in the lease and reduce the amount of income recognized over the lease term. On the part of the lessor, a finance lease is either direct financing or sales type lease. The main distinction between the two is the presence or absence of a manufacturer or dealer profit or loss. A direct financing lease recognizes only interest income, and a sales type lease recognizes interest income and gross profit on sale. Sa direct financing lease, the lessor in a direct financing lease is actually engaged in the financing business. So, a direct financing lease is an arrangement between a financing entity and a lessee. So, sales type lease naman, the lessor in a sales type lease is actually a manufacturer or dealer that uses the lease as a means of facilitating the sales of product. The accounting for a lease type, for a sales type lease exhibits many similarities to that of direct financing. However, a sales type lease involves the recognition of a manufacturer or dealer profit on the transfer of the asset to the lessee in addition to the recognition of interest income. Residual value. The estimated amount of an asset gained from disposal after the deduction or already at the end of its useful life. The residual value is only guaranteed if it is guaranteed by the lessee or by a party related to the lessee. So, tignan natin yan. Merong residual value, may two types siya, may guaranteed and unguaranteed. Kapag guaranteed, residual value guaranteed is the guarantee made to the lessor by a party unrelated to the lessor that the value of an underlying asset at the end of the lease term will be at least a specified amount. So kapag guaranteed by the lessee, guaranteed by a party related to the lessee, and guaranteed by a party unrelated to the lessor. Kapag unguaranteed residual value naman, it is that portion of the residual value of the underlying asset, the realization of which by the lessor is not assured or is guaranteed solely by a party related to the lessor. So, guaranteed lang siya ng isang party related to the lessor kapag unguaranteed. Modifications. Change in the scope of a lease. Consideration for a lease that was not part of the original terms and condition of the lessee. So, kapag ka nagkaroon ng changes dun sa may terms and conditions sa contract which is not part of the original contract, it is accounted for as a separate asset or remeasurement or derecognition. Move on to the operating lease on the part of the lessor, which does not transfer substantially all the risk and rewards. Operating lease, PFR 16 provides that a lessor shall recognize lease payments as income either on a straight line basis or another systematic basis. Operating lease sa part ni lessor is same as the recognition exemption in the part of the lessee. So here, initial direct cost and depreciation. Initial direct cost incurred by the lessor in an operating lease shall be added to the carrying amount of the underlying asset and recognized as an expense over the lease term on the same basis as the lease income. Depreciation. Depreciation policy for depreciable leased asset shall be consistent with the lessor's normal depreciation for the similar asset. Advance rent and lease bonus. Advance rent, payment at the beginning of the period. Lease bonus, amount paid by the lessee to the lessor. Any lease bonus received by the lessor from the lessee is recognized as an earned rent income to be amortized over the lease term. So let's have this illustration or these transactions. On January 1, 2020, Simple Company purchased a machinery for 3 million cash for the purpose of leasing it. The machine is expected to have a 10-year life and no residual value. So, paano natin siya i-record? On January 1, i-record natin siya as machinery 3 million and cash 3 million. So, next, on April 1, 2020, Simple Company lists the machine to another entity for 3 years or at a monthly rental of 50,000, payable at the beginning of every month. So, paano natin siya i-record? We debit cash 50,000 times 9 months since we do have 9 months from April hanggang December. So, makukuha mong amount is 450,000 and recognize it as rent income as stated in the discussion earlier. On April 1, 2020, Simple Company received a security deposits of 600,000 to be refunded upon the lease expiration. So, we debit cash and credit liability for rent deposits. Kasi sinasabi na yung security deposits refundable upon the lease expiration shall be accounted by the lessor as a liability. So, we record that as 600,000 liability on rent deposit. In addition to the rental, Simple Company received from the lessee a lease bonus of 120,000 on January 1, 2020. So, we debit cash 120,000 and an earned rent income since that is a lease bonus. Recognize it as an earned rent income. So next, on April 1, 2020, Simple Company paid initial direct cost of 300,000. I-record natin siya sa debit, initial direct cost of 300,000 pesos and credit cash. During the year, Simple Company paid repair and maintenance of 20,000 pesos. So that's an expense, repair and maintenance will be on the debit and credit cash. The lease bonus amortized over 3 years or for 40,000 annually. Debit and earned rent income and rent income on the credit. Bakit 30,000 lang? Kasi 40,000 annually raw. So, mula April hanggang December lang yung i-computing mo. Kaya, naging 30,000 because 40,000 times 9 9/12. The machinery is depreciated over 10 years or 300,000 annually. Magre-record tayo ng depreciation and accumulated depreciation. Pero may note tayo dyan. Note that the depreciation is from the date of acquisition kung kailan mo na-acquire. So, mula January ka magsisimula, hindi mula April. Kasi kung kailan yung acquisition date, dun ka magsisimula, hindi dun sa may kung kailan mo siya in-enter into a lease contract. So, next. The initial direct cost is recognized as expense over the lease term. Amortization of initial direct cost, 75,000 and deferred initial direct cost, 75,000. Take note that the balance of the deferred initial direct cost shall be presented as an addition to the carrying amount of the machinery. Under ng operating lease, kapag ka nagkaroon ng lease modification or changes in the scope of lease consideration for a lease that was not part of the original terms and condition of the lease, it is accounted for as a new lease at the date of commencement. Lease of land and building. In determining whether the land element is an operating lease or a finance lease, an important consideration is that land normally has an indefinite economic life. So, hindi natin ma-determine agad kung gaano ba katagal yung useful life ng isang land since it has an indefinite useful life or economic life. So, paano gagawin natin? The application guidelines B56 provides that the lease payments are allocated between the land and the building elements in the proportion for their relative fair value at the inception date. If the lease payments cannot be allocated reliably between the two elements, between the land and the building, the entire lease is classified as a finance lease. Automatically, it is a finance lease. And for lease of land and building in which the amount for the land element is immaterial, the lessor regards the economic life of the building as the economic life of the underlying asset. Sale and lease back. When a party sells an asset, immediately lease it back. Yung seller, nagiging lessee, and yung buyer, nagiging lessor. Both seller and buyer validates if the transfer qualifies as sale under PFRS 15. This sums up the discussion for the leases or the lease accounting part 1 and part 2. Thank you and God bless.